Good evening, and welcome again to Public Perspective. I'm your host, Kevin McDermott, and tonight we're going to venture off into the land of whimsy and comic books. Tonight our guest is comic author, cartoonist, Art Baltazar.
That's right.
Art?
That's me. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, this is cool. It's close to home. It wasn't that bad to get here, so it's cool.
Well, and you're a more famous person than most people probably know.
I like to think so. And my website says famous cartoonist, but yeah, I'm famous when I go to comic conventions. So, but when I go home, I still have to throw out the garbage, you know.
Yeah. Yes. Your dad. You still have to do all the dad
Yeah,
things,
I'm a
right?
dad. Yeah, husband, dad, homeowner. So.
Well, let's talk about this guy behind us that you can sort of see.
Yeah.
It has your name, Art Baltazar, but that cat is not Art. So who's the cat?
That's Action Cat. He's a mascot for our store, Oh Yeah Comics. We have a store in beautiful downtown Skokie, right downtown on Oakton Street.
And it's called Oh Yeah.
Oh Yeah Comics, yeah. We won the Merchant of the Year award this year too.
From
Skokie.
How about that?
Yeah, we're getting an award on Monday, 2 days from now, a few days from now.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the things you've done. Before the show, we were talking about some of the books you've done, and you've worked with DC Comics.
Yeah.
You have your own comic line, Oh Yeah Comics.
Yeah.
And you've done some pretty famous characters, haven't you?
Yeah, I worked on Tiny Titans, who are the Teen Titans but smaller. I worked on Superman, Crypto and Ace the Bat Hound for Super Pets, Green Lantern, and
Batman.
Batman. I drew Batman stuff. He's in Super Pets, and yeah, I got to dabble into DC's world for several years.
So
it's
I
kind of
think
cool.
for most people watching the show, they're looking at it thinking, that is just too cool. How
Yeah.
on earth do you get there? How do you get to draw Superman?
I don't know. It was a long time. This is my 20th year making comics, and I've been working with DC Comics since 2007. So not quite 20 years. But it starts out with self-publishing your own comic book, and I've done that for 15 of those years, and then I was Patrick the Wolf Boy was my first breakout book.
And that Patrick the Wolf Boy was one of your characters? You were drawing that for it? Okay.
Yeah, it was my own, yeah. And before that...
In fact, we have...
yeah, we got him, yeah.
Here, to hold that up and we'll see if we can get a shot of that Patrick the Wolf Boy.
Patrick the Wolf Boy?
Yeah.
He's loved by many,
yeah.
but misunderstood by everybody. Yeah.
Loved by many, misunderstood by everyone.
Yeah.
That's a good moniker.
Because I first started comics, and my first book came out in '94, and it was the Crybaby Adventures. They were based on like art supplies, and I struggled to find. Back then, there was no internet or anything, so I had to figure out everything how to publish, how to be a famous cartoonist, all by making phone calls and licking envelopes and stuff. So it was tough.
So it was a lot of work, I'm sure.
Yeah, no one knew. At that time, you'd sell your comic book one person at a time, you know, and I go to all these conventions all over the country, and that I struggled because my orders for the books, I found out how to get a distributor, but the orders were coming in. They were only like 100 copies or 200 copies. So it was hard to pay the rent like that. So I had to work a bunch of jobs, a bunch of different jobs, and then...
Part-time job, not drawing, not
No,
cartoonist
I always had jobs that were real hurting. So I didn't want to get paid a lot of money so I could stay poor and go home and draw comics. And I had to do what I had to do.
So how long did it take you before you were actually able to sustain yourself on comic drawing?
Probably around 2003, 2002.
Okay, so it took you a good 10 years before you were really
yeah,
able to
because
make a go of
I
it.
came out with Patrick in 2000, and suddenly I got an order from the distributor for 4,000 copies of the comic, where before my last book only sold 158 copies.
Total. Right.
So I'm like, what the? Yeah. So I told my partner, Franco, I said, what should we do? He said, let's make another one. So we made that. We made like 19 issues of Patrick in a row, and that's when we were starting to pay our bills a little bit. So I still had to work.
How did you get them printed? I mean, where did you go to suddenly get 4,000 copies of this thing printed?
Yeah, I had to find printers. There was a printer in Texas I used, and I would copy. I would go to Kinko's all night long, stay up all night, and copy the artwork and put it on order and write the page numbers and send him a package to Texas printer, and they would print it and then send me a copy. Is this good? You know, and
Yeah, right.
it was all non-digital.
Yeah, right. It was all
long-
through the mail. It's all analog.
Yeah,
Right?
like it would take 4 weeks to publish a book to get it printed, and now it's like a week and a half. You know, so
Because
it's not even.
you just email the PDF to them, and
Yeah, everyone
they
has
go,
a folder somewhere online or
Yeah.
something. But we had to do it that way, and I had to make phone calls and stuff, and the phone was on the wall. We didn't have text. So if I wasn't home, that's it. I had to wait the next day to call a guy back. So
how do you come up with your characters? I mean, Patrick, and you've got some other characters. You've
Yeah.
got the whole action cat in Oh Yeah. How do you come up with these guys?
I have a sketchbook with me constantly. I have, like, you know, when you go to the art store, you buy the hardcover sketchbooks. I have tons of them. I go through about 3 or 4 a year, and I just draw on them every day. I doodle stuff, every idea, anything I think of, every story, every character is in my sketchbooks. So I can't, like, when I'm a little old man, I know my grandkids are going to go to Antique Roadshow with these things. Say, hey, look, what can we get for this? It's dated 1998.
It was just when the internet was just getting started.
Yeah. So the way Patrick was created was I did a little face. I drew the character's face. And I didn't have a name for him yet. And I showed my buddy Frank. I went to his house because we would watch wrestling, order pizza, and just draw and stuff. So I showed him this picture. I said, hey, what do you think? What is this guy? And then we started making up stories right away. And we thought he was a little vampire. But I said, I think he's a wolf, because then I turned him in, I made him fuzzy. So we named him Patrick. And I have a brother named Patrick, and he's kind of like a jungle boy. So he's out in Guatemala or doing something, swinging in hammocks or something. So I made him based on him, and he's a wolf boy. So
Does your brother know now that you think,
Yeah.
you think of him as a wolf boy?
yeah, he met Patrick the Jungle Boy in one of the books, so it was kind of funny. And then we just started making comics with him, and they caught on, and people really liked them. Like, I had people coming up requesting me to draw Patrick for them, and that was kind of cool. It was like rewarding. Finally, I'm doing a character that came from me that
people connect to.
Yeah, and that I could do. It's cool. It's freeing when you have your own character. You can do whatever you want to do, and if people like them, that's awesome.
Sure, because when you're working for DC, I mean, it's Superman.
Yeah.
You get you get, even if it's Superman, you get
Yeah.
to create the storylines, right?
Yeah, I did all of the. I did a 12-issue series called Superman Family Adventures for DC, and it's kind of like I did Tiny Titans first, and this came after Tiny Titans. But before then, with Patrick the Wolf Boy, I caught the attention of the DC editors, and my friend Jan, she's still a friend of mine now, and she offered me a job at DC to draw Tiny Titans, and I did that for about 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years. I did 50 issues in a row every month,
Wow.
50 issues, and then it spun off into Superman Family. And I was so excited to do Superman Family because it's the first time I ever pitched a company who asked me, "What do you want to do next?" And I said, "I want to make Superman comics." And they said yes, and I couldn't
Really?
believe it. I was ready for
Didn't have to sell them. You just pitched it, and
I had like 5 pitches ready to go, and I pitched Superman first. And I'm like, wow, I don't have to show them this other stuff. So they said,
Well, that seems
yes.
like it's kind of the top of the heap. Like, if you get
Yeah.
to draw Superman, like, where do you go from there?
I don't know. That's what my dad said. He says, wait a minute. So you did Tiny Titans? I said yes. And we won 2 Eisner Awards for Tiny Titans, and it's like
Eisner, is that
it's
Disney?
like it's not the Eisner's like the Oscar for movies. It's called the Will Eisner Award for comics, and they give it to they have an award show every year at San Diego Comic-Con, which they give the best of the best this award, and the Eisner Award is there's a bunch of little awards and a bunch of there's all kinds of awards, but this is the big one. This is
And so you've won that twice?
yeah.
Wow. So you get 2
2009,
Oscars,
2011.
right?
Yeah, it's kind of cool. And
Yeah.
my dad pointed it out. He said, well, you did Tiny Titans. You made, you got 2 Eisners, and now they gave you Superman? Like, yes. He goes, well, what do you do now?
Yeah. Well,
Where do you go
how do you
from
go up
here?
from
I'm
there,
like,
right?
I don't know. Freaking out. He was like, I don't know what to do now. So it's like you reached the top of the plateau, and
But you haven't. I mean, now you've continued to
I'm
go
doing
on
more
and do
stuff.
other,
Figure out how to move on,
right? Well, in fact, coming back to Oh Yeah, this is
Yeah.
a fairly recent launch, right?
Yeah, that's Action Cat and Adventure Bug. I'm going to hold it up.
Sure.
Action Cat and Adventure Bug. That's all you have comics. There's Hammond the Bear. He runs a shop, and the bad guy is Evil Cat and Ghost Bug. And when me and my partners, Franco and Mark Hammond, we were friends from conventions, and we signed at Mark's store in Florida for a little bit and a few times. And then we all go to dinner, we all hang out and talk. And Mark and Franco were always talking about opening up a store. But the problem is he's in New York, Mark's in Florida, and I'm in Chicago. And then that one day I said, what are you guys talking about? And then they're like, we wanted to open up a store. And I'm like, wow, how can we do that? And they're like, okay. And then it just spiraled in maybe a year and a half, or almost 2 years of talking about it. And my friend Mark moved from Florida, moved to Chicago. And now he's here. And he was here. And so he would call me, and we would go drive around the city looking for a spot for the store. And it just kind of all evolved into a thought, a plan. Let's just do it. So we opened up a store right on Skokie. We liked the location downtown. It had this small community feel. And we opened the door as soon as the city gave us permission.
So it seems odd in the digital age.
Yeah.
That first of all, that you're still producing physical, hands-on comic books.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
And that you open an actual storefront to sell physical comic books.
Yeah.
How does that work? Do people who buy comics still want to buy the book, and it's not quite the same in digital form?
Yeah, people. I think people like the paper comics. There's a lot of fans who buy digital too, and I like that too, because there's different effects you could get digital. You could go panel by panel and make the word balloon bigger and stuff like that. But with comics in the store, people, I think, from what I see, kids really like to hold the paper book.
And by kids, what age group are you talking about?
I'm thinking about kids. I'm saying 10 and under.
Okay.
Anytime they could first read, even our store, when we first opened our store, I think the first customer was a 13-year-old girl. And then a second customer was the same girl, but she brought her like 9-year-old brother, little brother, and her little sister. So and then the third one's like a family, a husband, wife, and kids in a stroller. They all, so that was really cool to see in the community where we opened the store, and we have a giant kids book section just in our store. Like I always say, it's a percentage of the store. It's like almost like a quarter of the store. It's just the first corner when you walk in is all kids books. But I think kids really like to read the comics. I see my kids sitting in bed reading books.
Your own children?
Yeah, my own kids, yeah. And I see my daughter I always see, sometimes when I get up in the morning, they go to school, I see the books she read because she lines them up on a kitchen table. Like, oh, she read all these in a row.
And a lot of them were yours, right?
Yeah, most of them. Yeah. Right. But it's funny because they like a lot of other comics. Like they'll read Strawberry Shortcake and Adventure Time and stuff. But they always like mine.
Well, talking about kids, when I was growing up, of course, I read comics voraciously. I was always going to the store and buy the latest. Spider-Man was my favorite. But I'd buy all sorts of things, right? And so when I think of comics, I always think of them as just being kid stuff. But that's not necessarily true today, right? When you talk about kids and adults, I mean, there are people your age and my age who still read comic books, right? And there's a growing market for that. But is that that's not necessarily who you cater to with your books, right?
Yeah, I make books for everybody, but most important thing is my books have to be accessible to kids. They have to be able to read my comics. An adult can read my comics, and I have adults who don't have kids. They're not parents at all, and they read my comics. And then there's grandmas who read my comics. There's single guys, there's single ladies, there's kids. So the term all ages actually applies to me. I don't try to write just for kids. I write, if I think it's funny, I'll put it in my comic. I think if it's a cool story, I'll put it in the comic. But now that I have kids, I'm really, really aware of what goes in every comic book. And I don't really change the way I've been writing since 20 years ago. It's just that now that I'm aware who the readers are, because I see people line up and buy comics from me and get sketches, I know who they are now. So it's different.
How does that change? I mean, what would you do now that you might not have done 20 years ago, or differently from 20 years ago?
20 years ago, I would have stayed at my mom's house as long as I possibly can.
The rent's cheap,
and just draw all day and print every comic book that I ever made. So that's but you're in a hurry to get out and grow up and pay your rent and go and have a party and all this stuff. That's what I would have that's what I would have did different. So I wouldn't have moved out until I was about 30 instead of when I was 22 or 23. So that was the big difference. That's the game changer. But once you get out there, you know you got to do it. There's
no going back.
No, if I'm working at a crappy job, I'm either stuck at that job or I got to do something. I already have the bachelor degree, and no one's ever asked me to see it. I mean, I have it at home. I call it the receipt.
Yeah.
You know, 'cause I don't know. It's mostly in the art field, and there's lots of fields. Anything creative, usually, it's what you do, your experience, and your what you bring and what you have.
The quality of your output. People look at your books and say, okay, that's good.
Yeah, but if you want to work in a bank or you want to teach at a public school, that's when you have to show the degree. You have to prove.
Right.
But anything else, especially your own business, nobody cares about.
No,
right?
they just want to know what you can do. Show me your output.
I dropped out in 7th grade, and I own a multi-million-dollar online business. You know,
yeah, there are guys just like that. You know, right?
So it's different.
So when you are writing comics, and you talk about trying to be funny, and I know you've done Green Lantern, you've done some Superman.
Yeah.
And I don't think of those as being funny comics, but can you make them funny? I mean, when you're thinking about them, are you?
Oh yeah, all my books they're funny. They're good. They're that's the way I make. I'm a cartoonist, heart and soul. So everything that comes out of me is cartoony.
Okay, so you're thinking about what's the joke?
Yeah, I think about stuff every day. I just write and draw and create stuff every day. And when I don't, I get real grouchy. I get kind of bored. And I was just like July 4th, July 3rd and 4th, I took 2 days off in a row. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I'm sitting there and told my wife, I feel like I need to do something. She's like, relax.
I can't just sit here in the yard and
just
have a nice
relax,
tea.
Yeah. I was trying real hard. So she's good because she goes, well, get your sketchbook. And that held me. I got my sketchbook and opened it up. As long as I'm sitting there with the book open and just writing stuff every few minutes, and I'm okay. And then I take a sip of my Red Bull and I'm good.
Write some more. Right.
Yeah.
So what's different when you write, for example, when you write Superman, and I know with this one here, this is Superman that's really aimed, let's see, we get that. That's Superman that's really aimed at a younger audience. So this is when you talk about kids, this is like the 10 and under audience, right? So what do you do here in this book that really is different from the what I would think of as the standard Superman?
You know, when I write, we're different because when I write Superman Family, I think about all the stuff I read and all the Superman, everything Superman that I know. Like you have the movies, comics, cartoons. There's Lois and Clark TV show. There's all kinds of stuff, and I just remember all of that. And I'm a huge Superman fan. And when I was a kid, it was superheroes. It was Super Friends and Batman until Star Wars came out, and then Star Wars took over. And then a year later, Superman came out, and then you had Indiana Jones and E.T. and then 2 more Star Wars movies. So all of that was the bulk of the childhood that got into my brain. So Star Wars took over. It's still controlling me. I still buy the action figures. But Superman and Star Wars have always been there together, and Superman has always been the standard for good, for superheroes, for what he should be. So when I wrote that story, the book Superman Family, I thought about everything that I know about Superman and put it in the book.
Because you needed to be true to the character. Right?
Yeah, like he's Superman. He does everything super. He runs better than you. He flies. He looks. He sees further than you. He has super breath. Everything's super. Even his dog is super.
Right.
You know.
Super breath. Yeah.
He's
Well,
got
that's true.
cousins. Yeah, he's got everything super. So why wouldn't his sense of humor would be better? His attitude with life would be better. Everything is better. Superman's just better than.
He's just super, right?
He's super all
in
around.
every aspect.
So in there, I took all the bad guys that we know, Lex Luthor, Brainiac, Parasite, Bizarro. I brought them all back. And in my book, Superman Family, I really wanted the aspect of family. Like Superman, a lot of times these days, like especially in the movies, he's always depicted as a loner. Like especially in the Brandon Routh movie, he was kind of like a deadbeat dad looking through the wall at his kid, and that was kind of weird. You really felt that he was alone. And this next one too, he's an alien. He's by himself. So the aspect of family, he's not alone. He has 2 sets of parents. He has cousins. Right. He has Superboy, Supergirl. He has Krypto. He has Beppo the Super Monkey. He has all kinds of people. He's got a copy of himself, Bizarro. Why can't he be his buddy, So he has Mom and Pa Kent, and even the bad guys are involved with his life too. So
Sure, he's known them throughout many, many issues, right?
Yeah.
The relationship goes way back,
He
right?
probably knows Lex Luthor better than anybody else.
For
you know?
sure.
So I wanted to really bring that into the story, and I had the story written out for 50 issues, and then I found I was going to be canceled at number 12. It was ending, so like, I was disappointed that it was ending, but I had to kind of cram some of the. I had to make the books tighter. Yeah, I had 50 storylines all plotted out, because I was hoping it would last as long as Tiny Titans, go 50 issues.
And an issue is once a month?
Yeah, every month. Yeah, 20 pages a month or so, and it was just cool, and I really explored, like, I don't know if I want to spoil, but there's a moment in issue number 8 that I bring back people who were always dead from the first issue of Superman. So Jor-El's in it, but we've seen Jor-El in the movies, and he's always been a ghost. But it's just good, man. I brought everybody, flesh and blood. They're back. There's people in there.
Because you can do that. You're the guy writing the storylines, right?
and it's amazing. Like when I write stuff and submit stories, and I get back like, okay, good, it's good to go. I was like, wow. It's kind of cool.
And that's amazing me because, as you say, you're bringing back characters who've been dead since before the issue started, and DC says, "Okay, sounds good. Let's go with it." Right?
Yeah, and it's kind of cool because the books I make are kind of like they're not in the regular canon of the regular mainstream superhero books, so I kind of have like I always say, I threw the hockey gloves off the floor and just went in there and did it. So it's fun because I'm currently working on Hellboy right now, from Dark Horse Comics.
Sure.
I'm making him small. I made him. His name's Itty Bitty Hellboy, and it's all about Hellboy and his friends. And that book is definitely not really. It's for an older readers, but mine is totally for kids. It's for all age readers. So it's cool how you can make a guy called Hellboy with the word hell in his name, and how evil witches and demons, and put him in this book and.
And so it's okay for 10-year-olds,
yeah,
right?
it's like Hot Stuff and Casper. They're kind of dead too,
More than kind of. Casper is very dead, right?
Yeah, he's a ghost, you know. And he has friends. Spooky is a ghost too.
Right.
He has brothers, So it's kind of cool.
Who's the favorite character you've worked on?
Oh man, I like a lot of them. I'm having a good time with Action Cat right now, but I was in my glory with Superman and even Tiny Titans, working on Robin and Crypto the Superdog. Everything I work on, I like throw myself in there. It becomes part of me. And Action Cat and Adventure Bug is really cool because it's my own characters. They're store mascots, so to me they're never going away. They're always. That's the one book that I can never stop drawing. That is not going to get canceled. It's not going to get stopped. I know it's never going to end. And
so why does an issue end? Like, for example, Teen Titans went 50 issues.
Yeah.
Superman Family went only 12. Why? I mean, or do you even know how they make those decisions?
I think it's just business, sales, try to refresh something. But I think it's just all business and sales and stuff. Because you have to be, comic book industry these days are real different than what it was in 50s and 60s, 70s, 80s. Especially, I think 80s and 90s was the big boom. We were selling millions of copies of comics. But now, I think my comics were only selling about 7 or 8,000. 1992 comics were selling 2 million copies.
Yeah, that's a big change.
Back in those days, you wouldn't get canceled until you maybe sold 600,000. Like, oh, it's a little low. But now 600,000, man, you'd make all kinds of world records.
Be a killer hit.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So I think it's all business, but I get it. Everything you do has a lifespan. So,
sure. In fact, if you think about just anything you do in your life, there are times you're at certain places. There are times when certain things are happening.
Yeah.
I actually think of this with some friends of mine who are musicians who play at this particular coffee house. And I pointed out to one of them, right now, that's a very happening spot. The owner, the owner is the right owner, it's the right time, it's the right place, and this is what's happening. And a year from now, or 2 years from now, something may change. The owner may sell, the zoning ordinance could change.
Yep.
And so anything you look at has that, the outside world kind of, changes things around, whether you like it or not. And so anything has a lifespan.
Even like look at like Vanilla Ice or MySpace. That was
yeah.
so cool happening.
MySpace
Everybody
was
had
the coolest
MySpace
thing.
page.
Sure.
Yeah, it's gone.
I mean, it's still there, but it's not relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you just get the next thing's going to happen, you know? So right now Facebook and Twitter is the big thing, but
Now you had, speaking of next things, you had an interesting experience with Kickstarter.
yeah.
On Oh Yeah.
Yeah. We when we first opened a store, part of our store, we wanted to make mascots for our store. And for our store, we wanted to make it feel like when you come into our store, you're in our world, and we don't necessarily want you to leave. So it's like, we want you to stay. We don't care if you buy one book or no books. We want you to hang out. So we have couches in our stores. We have a table. We have it's real comfortable. And people come. I had people fly all the way from Florida to come in here.
Just to hang out at the store.
Yeah, people drive from Minnesota just to on their way to New York. They stop in there and they sit around, hang out. So when we did that, I wanted to make it our world. Like it's kind of like if you see me at a convention, comic show, drawing at my table, I wanted that same feeling in our store. So now we have not only our books but everyone else's books. We had Spider-Man, Superman, they're all there. So with that, we wanted mascots for the store. So when you walk in, there's a big action cat painted on the wall, and there's an adventure bug over on this wall, and the colors are there. They're red and yellow and blue and green. So the next thing we planned everything before we even opened the store. We said when we get a store, we got to make comics with our mascots. And at first, I was just going to get the black and white paper, fold them, and staple them in the kitchen by yourself, and put them on the shelf. And then we started coming up with cool stories, and we started coming up with more and more ideas. And then we thought, well, why don't we print them for real? We could do them once a month. We'll put them on the shelf. And we had once we started talking to other creators, they started submitting ideas and stories. So we're like, well, all right, let's do that. And then we looked at the price for printing. And we're like, oh,
that's too much money.
That's a lot of money. We can't really afford it because my kids need to eat too. And
they're going to school.
Kids are grown. They need shoes and clothes. I don't know if I can do that. And then I want my wife to stay. So I'm like,
there's some certain things you have to do to keep domestic harmony, right?
Yeah. So then we thought maybe we'll do one every 4 months or one every year or something. And so then the more and more we talked about it, my one friend, we call him General Zod. Zod said, why don't we do a Kickstarter? And then I knew what the Kickstarter was all about, and I knew I didn't have time to do a Kickstarter because right after that happens,
And for people who don't know, that's an online way that you can
Yeah,
get
it's
money
like
from
group funding.
crowdsourcing of funding. Right.
Yeah, and I knew that once you do that, it's a job, it's a constant, and I had no time to do it. My buddy Franco had no time, but Zod said, "I'll do it." So we all right, you are now publisher. You do it. So he did a successful campaign. We did a film in my store. I asked for funding. We needed $15,000 for printing to do 6 issues. And
you got it in?
We got it in less than 8 hours.
Wow.
And then...
Well, on that note, believe it or not, speaking of 8 hours, a half hour is already up.
Is it really?
I know, it's astonishing, isn't it?
Oh, man.
Well, Art, you're just going to have to come back.
I will. We can do part 2.
Fun. Right, all right. So thank you very much for being my guest. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin. You're awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. I feel the same way.
Wow. I didn't even get into it yet.
And thank you for joining us once again on Public Perspective. I'm your host, Kevin McDermott. Please join us every Saturday night at 8 on Comcast Channel 19, and you can find us on the web at publicperspective.tv. So until next time, thank you and good night.